And a move is just a state signed by the right entities, right? And you can take the state, remember, and present it to the judge, and the judge, if the judge accepts the state, this is the truth. So what kind of things do you guys need to worry about when you start using our awesome force move game framework, right? You need to worry about all this stuff. Well, it ends up that no, you only need to worry about the bottom game attributes, which are totally arbitrary. So you don't need to worry about the channel attributes or the framework attributes. You can gear this thing to be your application-specific state. And we talked about the game attributes of rock, paper, scissors. I don't remember what the slide's about, so let's take a look. So this shows alternative moves. So remember how in rock, paper, scissors, someone could propose a stake and broadcast basically a stake proposal of 2 ETH. Well, what if they broadcast 2 proposals, one with a stake of 1 ETH and one with a stake of 2 ETH? How does that work? What's stopping them? Well, nothing is stopping them from doing that. And in fact, it is not really advantageous for them to do that unless there's some intention behind it. So if in this case Jude proposes 2 states, Tess is free to choose any one of those states, right? And the idea is that in some cases it might be advantageous for that to happen. Think of a payment channel, right? So let's say I'm playing against Andrew over there, right? Well, it's a payment channel. You can think of it as a game, but really it's just a transactional channel. Andrew does a bit of coding for me, and I want to pay him. So I pay him 1 ETH, right? And then he does some more coding, and now, it's still, he can take an empty turn and pay me 0 money just so I can pay him again. Sounds wasteful. I can just broadcast a new state that updates my payment to be 2 ETH. And now Andrew could choose which state he wants to take to the blockchain in order to withdraw that money. And obviously he's going to choose the state that's more advantageous to him, which is the higher amount. So now we'll talk about this adjudicator. I found it to be kind of a mouthful, so I'll use the word judge to be as a synonym, but really it's a judge and the bank. It's a smart contract that sits on the chain, and it holds your money, and it also makes decisions on who's right. So what kinds of things does our judge do? So our judge responds to the following method, the following function calls. We're not going to talk about conclude. You can think of conclude as we finished our state channel, it's time for everyone to withdraw money, the night's over, let's go home and get our money back. It's cooperative play, it's not super interesting. We're going to talk about force move, refute, respond move, and alternative respond move. Force move sounds really important, right? It's the force move framework, force move games. It's got to be important. And the reason it's important is because that's how you challenge people on chain, right? That's how you enforce rules. So we have our favorite characters. We have Matt and Tess. So this is our state. Tess plays force move presenting state 2, right? And Tess says, hey Matt, you were at move, you were at state 1, and I moved to state 2. Now you have to move. Why would she ever play a force move on the chain, right? Well, it could be because Matt is just ghosting and not cooperating. He's disappeared, and now we're in this entity of a state channel where we've theoretically exchanged all this stuff, but really all this money is still tied up in the smart contract. So how do we get it out? And Matt's disappeared all of a sudden, so like Tess is at a loss. So Tess is holding a valid state now, and she can go to our judge and say, Matt has disappeared, here's my state, I want Matt to respond. So one of the options that Matt has is Tess could be an evil entity. And Matt she submits the state 2 that's advantageous to her to the on-chain contract. And Matt comes back and says, you know what, that's actually not the latest state. The latest state is state 4. And Tess is trying to, behave improperly for some reason. And potentially Tess can even be punished for this. So that's one of the ways Matt can respond to this force move. Maybe Matt is, maybe Matt actually wants to keep playing and he just like forgot that he had the state channel open. So Matt can say, okay, you played a force move against me. Let's just go back to playing in the state channel. I'm going to respond with a move, and we can just go back to our off-chain world. Or this is very similar to respond with move, and it could have been that the state Tess sent out to the judge was a valid state. It wasn't an outdated state, but it was one of the many she played previously. So Matt can basically invoke this alternative function call to respond to that move. So that's actually all I have right now. This is, so all of our stuff is on GitHub. This includes contracts that you would deploy to the chain for the judge. This includes game rules that you would deploy to the chain for the game, and this includes our rock, paper, scissors application that is off the chain component. So you guys should check it out, give us feedback, ask us questions, and you can find all of our contact information on there. So that's it. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later when we're drinking beer.
Well, thank you very much. Another round of applause. We are going to take a 3-minute breather while we prepare for our next guest. So we'll break for a minute, change out the AV, and then come back.
It's live.
Oh, it's okay. They're more high level, more general. There was just the speech channel. That was really good. Go ahead. But then we'll have like more of a hands-on thing later. Nathan's on deck.
Nathan, then we go into tag, and then we see you, right?
It crashed. I thought like blank out, so I restarted it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You restarted what? Just want to say hello. I'm Bhaskar at USC.
Oh hi. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you, Carl. My student, I think he had maybe chatted with you a little bit.
Yeah, he said you have a
TCR analysis.
Yeah.
I'd love to send you a copy of it.
I would love to read it.
Chat some more. You also mentioned you have an interest in Q-Tarchy.
Oh yeah.
And
Rob
I'd love to
Hansen, I've been
know
like,
what
yeah.
kinds of things you're doing in that space.
It's really more interest and more about like governance.
Okay.
So I've been following Rob Hansen, who just came back from Berlin. Spoke with Martin Koppelman. So he does Gnosis, and they do the whole prediction market. I'm just very fascinated in terms of like how to do like basically governance.
I just wanted to introduce you to Wojtek. Hi. We worked together. He's one of the
Czech Republic.
Basically, my last job, unfortunately, I just got everything on live stream. Then you live stream 5 hours. Live streaming. By the end of this, we'll be barely conventional live streaming. We have a virtual server set up next time. It's funny, working on this cutting edge shit. It's like the live stream we can't figure out. It's good, it's good. But yeah, let's yeah, it might be asking. Base could be the beginning right here. This is the beginning. Give it space. Give it space.
Some of us members league, it's a very interesting the ETHEREUM game.
Yeah. So a lot of people like immediately started buying all like SpecTrade.eth. Some guy bought SpecTrade.eth and then like coded it to us, like followed me and was like, I've got SpecTrade.eth. And so he like knew the guy too, and he's like, you're such a dick. Like, how dare you? Give it to me, and the guy's like, no, I want this. And we're like, what? Yeah, just keep it.
Yes, so the link, you could just go on YouTube and search Spanktoshi. Yeah, and then you'll find it.
Okay, cool, sure. The link to the live stream. You want me to send it to you?
Email it to you. Yeah.
I got a couple of my buddies that are they couldn't come today.
Alright, we're going to get started in a few minutes. If y'all want to come back to your students.
He didn't have the email because I was looking for directions before.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
that's right.
I just replied, so that's fine.
That should be it. That should work. Yeah, perfect.
Should he wear the should he wear the lapel mic? No? Good?
Sounds all good, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Action? Yeah. So like, oh, you're gonna it's supposed to look greasy.
talk about are payments and exchanges and doing them at scale and doing them usably. And when I say usably, I am qualifying that in terms of Bitcoin and trying to hit Bitcoin's requirements where you can send money to people. And we're going to try to answer this question, why are there no, or at least maybe minimally working layer 2 payment or exchange networks currently in the wild right now. Hopefully at the end of this we kind of get an understanding of why that is. So first, we were given Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is a distributed ledger. It computes things, and it does that through some sort of stack-based language. Bitcoin looks like this. You have a Merkle tree of transactions that get committed to a blockchain. There's a transaction down there in the bottom right corner. That transaction is specifically a multi-sig wallet. That's the opcodes to multi-sig. And you can see it just gets shoved into the blockchain, and so it has its own form of computation. There's a problem, as we all know, it's expensive, right? There's fees, there's low transaction throughput, and of course, just in general, decentralized consensus protocols are slow and hard to deal with. The first kind of concept to alleviate some of this pain on Bitcoin was the unidirectional payment channel. And it requires just one person signing funds over to somebody else. The receiver can potentially be offline for this, but it does not work over an intermediary, right? You can only just forfeit funds to somebody in the unidirectional payment channel. So there's a problem with that. You have to already have a channel open with somebody in order to engage in this activity, right? So it sounds nice, you can just send somebody a payment, but I have to open up a payment channel every time I want to do this. And that could potentially be as expensive as just sending the transaction in the first place if I don't already have a channel open with somebody. So Lightning kind of started to come up with solutions to this in the form of arbitration, right? So they decided to start putting intermediaries between transactions. So here you have Bob, say, trying to send money to Alice. They don't know who to go first, right? So if I was trying to do, say, an atomic swap with somebody, you have an asset that I want, I have an asset that you want. We don't know who to go first in a decentralized trustless way. I can't give you my asset and expect trustlessly that you'll just give me yours, right? You might just be like, nope, you gave me yours first, I'm taking off the money. So we need to come up with an arbiter, right? And then without Bitcoin, without blockchains, this would normally be done by somebody behind the desk. It would just be a person that you would trust. You would give your money to that trusted person who's supposed to not have any interest to screw you, and your counterparty would do the same. So hash time lock contracts were a way to do this on Bitcoin and use Bitcoin's blockchain as an arbiter for that process. And this is exactly how a hash time lock contract actually works in practice, right? So you have here Alice trying to send a transaction to Bob on the right. So Bob will generate a secret key. That's step 0. Send that over to Alice. Alice can then create a contract to lock a transaction to the intermediary under the assumption that that key will be revealed. If that key is revealed, then the intermediary can have that transaction. So the intermediary does the same thing. They forward that initial transaction from Alice to Bob, and it is locked under the condition that if the secret is revealed, then that Bob will get that transaction. So Bob's incentivized to reveal the secret to the intermediary so that he gets his funds, which then gives the intermediary the lock to get their funds back. And of course there's timeouts to that as well. So you can use this for a few things. You can use this for exchanges, decentralized atomic swaps, and of course payments if you want to route people, right? So an idea that they started to come up with in the Lightning Network was using more than one intermediary. So the problem is I don't have channels open with people, but what if there is somebody that does have a lot of channels open with somebody? So I can connect to them and they can connect me to my final destination. And you might want to do this over a few different hops too to get an accurate grid of everybody who's on the network. This should hopefully reduce the cost of opening channels, and this was kind of the main flagship behind the Lightning Network. And it looks like this. Here you have A trying to send a transaction to D. So D generates this secret, and you have this back propagation of contracts, and each one of them has a shorter timeout period than the last. So you'll see the transaction contract between C and D would have to expire before the contract between B and C, which would have to expire before the contract between A and B. And that was Lightning Network's solution to getting payments to everybody. But there's a problem with that, right? We have a routing problem. There's an inherent privacy to state channels where the reason it's fast is because nobody else cares about your payment. So if nobody else cares about your payment, then nobody else is tracking your payment. And if I'm not tracking your payment, then I can't know your liquidity. I can't find a path to D because I can't see how much of a balance everybody has. So I'm not sure where to go to route my payments. And that's specifically because of the privacy. So there was ideas to force people to checkpoint that information and sort of just make it public. If you wanted to be an intermediary, you would just sort of broadcast what you have, but that's trusted. You don't know if they're lying, and it's not ideal. The routing problem remains, and I haven't seen solutions to it. So in comes Ethereum, and Ethereum is basically Bitcoin, as we all know. Does the same thing, distributed ledger, it computes, but this time it has smart contracts as opposed to that stack-based coding that we saw before. And it looks like this. It's very similar. It's just a stack of blocks with Merkle root transactions, except this time we've got a contract that's going into those transactions. And it's the same one, except this time it's a multi-sig. And for brevity, I spared you what goes in between the blocks. So with smart contracts, you can kind of create like advanced hash time lock contracts. You can compute more things than you would normally compute on a stack-based language. So Raiden was born from this, and they created Merkle roots of conditional locked transactions to batch transactions because you have that power with smart contracts. And we have that because we can verify Merkle proofs. We can use smart contracts to do Merkle proof verification, and that offers some pretty cool things. So all things are looking good. We're starting to get more power to our base language that could potentially maybe fix some of these things, but oh no, another problem. We have this pre-image reveal problem, and we haven't really fixed the networking problem, and we've also found a new problem in this process where if you go back to these lockups here, you see that you could potentially have 3 lockup times, and they all wait on each other, so you have this linear timeout that keeps growing with the amount of hops. So that was an issue until Sprites came out with the global lock contract, and that's using again the power of Ethereum when we just realized, well, why do we have to use separate lock conditions if we can all just agree to the same lock? And it looks like this. So it's the same concept, but here, rather than having these timeouts in between, you can all just rely on the same global. So as soon as D releases the secret to this global contract, B is able to exit their money, C is able to exit their money at the same time. There is no more waiting. So that problem is solved. We're starting to look a little bit better. Routing problem is still there though. We still can't find liquidity paths. That doesn't seem to change. ETHEREUM research group out of Germany started to think about virtual channels. And what these really are channel managers. They're trying to take a payment channel and add some extra details to them that would allow you to open up potentially channels underneath these channels in a certain way. The intermediary doesn't need to know about all the transactions that happen in a virtual channel. They really only care about the opening and closing statements of the parties in the virtual channel. That is an improvement in some respects. It improves the network requirements for the hub to have to receive and broadcast forward messages. But it also, potentially reduces some information that you might need. It also enhances privacy, arguably. So ETHEREUM does do some interesting things. We were working with this kind of construct for quite some time. We found it very interesting. It can do bidirectional payment channels. That's kind of the main deal there is you're opening up a channel with a locked liquidity provider with another person, and this other person is going to be signing consensual messages with you. You can finagle a single direction payment channel into that, but the receiver is still going to need to come online to settle the channel to get the hub out. So we have this online problem that I've been thinking about for a while now, and has been the core of my research for the past few weeks. And basically, it's trying to get us on par with Bitcoin, where you can just send a transaction to somebody without requiring them to negotiate anything with you. And all of these previous solutions, except for sender, except for trivial ones, all require that the receiver be online to negotiate something. This doesn't feel like Bitcoin. It's not fast. It doesn't feel like a decentralized exchange either. If you use radar relay, you have to incur some cost on the blockchain in order to get this offline recipient. You have to kind of lose price over speed. So Plasma is a construct where we can land things on offline people. You allow a trusted party to attest to some data on chain. And if they're wrong, you can sort of exit before the wrong thing happens and challenge the person who committed that wrong thing and show where it went wrong. Plasma MVP works off of the UTXO base, which is just basically Bitcoin, and it uses the priority of the transactions to make sure that the exits happen in a certain order that you can always exit before something goes wrong. This seems to be good. It has some issues with limbo exits and I believe some fractional reserve concerns, but I'm not exactly clear. So MVP is still a viable solution that is being pursued by a few teams. The Plasma Cache is another idea on Plasma, and it's instead of storing transactions in a Merkle root, you're really storing proofs of your coin's history, so to speak. That you're given slots, so you put all transactions into one big tree. And if I have a coin inside the Plasma Cache, I'm just one little slot on this big tree. And if I transfer to somebody else, I just change the ownership of that slot to somebody else. And the proof of that being included in the Merkle tree is really what's getting put on chain. And that's what you can use to challenge and verify that you actually own something. That's great. Plasma Debit takes that a little bit further and allows you to put a balance on that slot with the operator itself. And that balance is a receiving capacity, so to speak. If you look at Plasma Cache, it looks a lot like state channels, where you are essentially just creating a channel with the operator, and you're putting some money on that channel with the operator, and then you kind of use the operator like an intermediary between payment channels. But the operator checkpoints some things, and that's kind of the difference between Plasma and state channels is the operator will checkpoint some data, where in state channels the operator never did that. The operator was just using hash locks to forward funds. But if you can make them attest to a few things, you might be able to do some interesting things. So there's a potential block data checkpointing problem in Plasma, where you have to, well, it's not clear how often you should checkpoint the data onto the chain. It's kind of a trade-off for every application. Each application will have to find its cost versus UX balance. So how user-friendly is this versus how much am I spending to make it user-friendly? The more you checkpoint, the more it's user-friendly, but then you're spending more money to do so. Plasma atomic swaps have not been solved yet, so this is an open problem if anybody's interested in this stuff. It's what I've been working on recently. So this is, trying to land offline swaps, right? So people trying to swap a token to somebody who's offline and do it through Plasma. They haven't figured that out yet. It's not clear that what they've constructed currently is better than, or what we're working on in Plasma is better than what we've already done with state channels. It may or may not be. Users currently still have to be online. Dan Robinson is doing a lot of great work with this. He's doing all sorts of Plasma stuff. Magmo, we've heard of that today already. And what's cool about Magmo is it breaks the consensus model of state channels and allows you to do this one-time force push as long as it's verifiable. And that's something that I think is useful. So what would a forward time lock contract look like? So this is something that would be an alteration to the hash time lock contract. Rather than revealing a secret as the condition to forwarding payments over the intermediaries, state may only forward if the recipient of the last hop in the chain verifiably receives it. So that's kind of the key there. If you can build a proof that the payment actually moved to the last person, you don't really need to make that last person generate a secret to send off to anybody. You still put a timeout on there. You still say, well, generate this proof that you forwarded my payment before this timeout, or I'm going to take my money back. And it kind of looks like this. Alice will generate some lock and send that locked contract off to an intermediary. And then the intermediary will have a channel open with the recipient and forward some funds to the recipient under the correct ID of the Alice locked contract. And once they do that, they'll have proof that will unlock the funds that Alice had locked with the intermediary. So with FTLCs, the receiver does not need to receive the state update, but there are a few considerations. What if the intermediary lies about the capacity that they have with the receiver? The receiver is offline, so I potentially can't get a hold of them and say, hey, Alice, or the intermediary is saying that they have 10 ether in this channel, but you are saying that they have 12 ether in this channel, or you're not online, so you can't tell me if they actually do have 10 ether or if they only have 5 ether. Maybe they're showing me a state update that's old and they actually spent some of that state and they're not, they're not being honest about that. So I need to force them to be honest in a way. And that's kind of what Plasma does. It sort of forces you to be honest. So you would have to construct something to where the hub makes a commitment on the main chain that attests to the fact that their capacity is valid and it's provable some way. And there's another thing of what if the intermediary withholds the forward proof of the receiver. This is a data withholding problem that Plasma deals with as well. And the answer to that would probably be similar to how Plasma deals with it. And you would do something like, if I notice that I'm not receiving a forward proof, then I could request that this coin history be shown. And if it's not, then we can assume there's a problem. So how does all this come together? I'm trying to build it into an actual functioning payment network. It'll be hopefully ready in the next 3 or 4 months and testable, and you should be able to just deposit some sort of currency on there and run offline payments and offline atomic swaps with people. We'll build a library called ETHEREUM for everybody to interact with this and build tools around it. And I'm also trying to build a game on top of this that we're calling Eternal Time Heroes. And that's swapping NFTs by battling and using advanced logic inside of state channels in a similar way to what Mac will present to you guys. And have a little bit of a teaser of what that looks like. So these are our main heroes, and these are our kitty grunts, and these are special because you can burn a crypto kitty to get one. And I'll show you how to do that later. And here's a little demo video of the gameplay. So these things will award NFTs when you win fights. You can gamble your NFT if you lose fights. And we're exploring other things too, governance protocols for gamers to actually have a say in how the games go. All right, thank you. That's all I have. So if you guys have questions, let me know.
I
missed the first part. The essential contract to manage.
Yeah, so manage secrets and hash behind locked contracts.
Oh, you need an intermediary for that, correct?
Yeah.
So the idea of the hash lock is to keep the intermediary honest. So I think before that the construct was just simply sign a state update that's like unidirectional and trumps the other state updates sequence. I think in the old Bitcoin days you would sign it with a lower timeout on the transaction so that transaction could go through before going to the old timeout. But that was not a working intermediary. But you could view that as a unidirectional payment channel in its simplest form back in the old Bitcoin days. And then the HTLC kind of introduced the intermediary. And then I think I mean to mention once you do that, it's just a whole new can of worms. It's a different type of consensus game you have to play. Any other questions?
All right, let's get it from Nathan.
All right, we'll take a 2-minute breather, and we'll come back.
For the food? The scanner for the food? No, it's just over here. Let me show you. Okay.
I was going to go to the...
It's a slice of this. Yeah, a slice of this. Just eventually. What's that? No, sort of. Not exactly. But each piece will eventually turn 18 by 36 inches. Square size is 6 inches. 18,900 squares total. We want to try to assemble it on the Mexican borderline. We want to market it at Mexican Art Club. It's visual blockchain. This particular artwork right here is going to vault blockchain into the American site. They will not escape. Once it's made larger than anything they've ever seen. Each one of these is a virtual an abstract expressive portrait of somebody famous. Except the portrait, the actual work was done.
All right, we'll get started in about a minute, so please come back.
What's that?
They're coming back. The 90s are back.
Okay, everybody, Miguel Morales. Please give him a round of applause.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, my name is Miguel Morales. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Lucidity. Before that, I got to work with MedX and AdChain. So I got to work with Mean and Mike, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, unfortunately, our lead protocol engineer couldn't make it. He was sick, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'll be presenting, kind of on his behalf, and we'll be reviewing the plasma, the research. a lot of, you might have heard a lot of these terms. Some people already kind of went over it, so I try not to dwell too much on it. And then I'll spend some more time a little bit kind of like what we're doing at Lucidity, which is in AdTech, and then how do we handle more kind of like generalized state transitions, and how do we reason about that, and some of our ideas there. Cool. So what is Plasma? It's basically a framework that allows you to scale to a significant amount of state updates per second. It's basically, you can think about it as blockchains within blockchains. It's a framework for incentivized smart contracts, and basically your root chain can be any root chain. Really, ideally it has Turing-complete smart contracts, which makes it much easier. But it could be Ethereum, it could be Archain, it could be anything that if it's a core solidity, it's even easier. And then your sidechains could be anything. The idea is that you basically spawn off a sidechain based on your specific business problem, so that you avoid the noisy neighbor problem, and then you can kind of create specialized sidechains, such as like the operators and the if you have consensus, the verifiers in the sidechain have an incentive to, and I'll get into it, to keep that sidechain running correctly. So here are kind of like some of the common features or themes around Plasma, mainly around deposits. So all the Plasma implementations allow you to create deposits, and you basically have state transitions that happens within the sidechain, and there's mechanisms to challenge certain things that happen. For example, in the NFTs, like to challenge that a token, for example, was already spent. And very importantly, it allows you for mass withdrawals or safe exits. Basically, you have this exit game where the deposits are ordered, so that the deposits that came in earlier can be withdrawn before the malicious withdrawals from the operators. So that does the priority queue, and the transactions it uses the UTA. Well, depends on the implementation. And so primarily all the sidechain, the Plasma concept still have the block holding problem, and the way they basically go around that problem is around the mass exit. So if the operators don't share the block blocks, then you can basically exit the chain. And so that's kind of like some of the main concepts around Plasma. You can also pretty much all the current big Plasma names are around a single operator, and this is great. It's easy to reason about. You can implement token transfers and all that. But you can also hook up a custom consensus algorithm. So you have a sidechain, for example, that can have its own consensus algorithm, memorializes that to the root chain, and then I'll go over to how we do it. So Plasma MVP is basically you have a U2XO model for deposits and withdrawals. The way that it works is that the participants basically track the entire history, and if there's a signal, basically they signal with each other if there's there's something wrong going on with the sidechain, and if there is, they're able to exit all their funds. So there's some scalability problems in such that the participants basically have to track the entire history to be able to basically know when something went wrong, and that's why you need the mass exits. Plasma Cache. So Plasma Cache basically changes things so that you don't need a mass exit, because now your state, each leaf is a coin. And so basically, you can withdraw those coins at any point. And so you only have to track basically your coin or your coins. And so that's what it's a sharded client-side validation. What that means is that it scales better because only the participants only keep track of their coins. So there's no really need for a mass exit. You can exit at any time. Plasma debit, as mentioned, is basically just like Plasma Cache. You have your non-fungible assets, and the only difference is that you open a payment channel with the operator. When the operator submits the block and it includes your transaction, that's a mechanism where they basically accepted that transaction. This is likely to be a single operator. You're not going to have a consensus. mechanism here. And really what it does, it adds a feature to Plasma Cash where you can have fractional tokens. Otherwise, it is very much like Plasma Cash. So now Plasma Snap, this is like, this came out a few days ago. It's really cool. It's based on some of the work by Barry Whitehat of the roll-up team. The way that it is kind of generally works, so you know, researching this heavily. But basically, it's a way to do a fully verifiable plasma chain. So basically, now your state transitions, you know, it can be verifiable. And so the way that it kind of generally works is the operator submits an aggregate of the state transitions from signed messages. The Merkle tree can represent leaf or state transitions. So kind of like Merkleized abstract syntax trees. But so for example, in our use case, we collect time series data, and so a leaf could be a transition from like, hey, this set of participants, this was the state before, which might be 0, and then you know this thing happened, and the new transition is 10 or something. And so it's a kind of a way to represent your state transitions. And your challenges can be proven on-chain basically by the operator revealing the leaves and providing proofs, and then the on-chain logic basically kind of recomputes that state transition logic and validates the transition. So you only open up certain leaves, generally speaking. And basically now when you can disprove on-chain that a certain state transition was invalid, you can go back to the the tip. Basically that gets validated, and then you go back to the previous latest good state. Cool. So all that is kind of like a very fast overview of the current plasma mechanism. So hopefully it gives you a nice, if you hear like what plasma MVP, kind of the idea is that you have mass exits, plasma cash, you have non-fungible tokens. Plasma debit is just non-fungible tokens with fractional specifications, and SNARKs are basically fully verifiable state transitions. Now I'll go into what we do at Lucidity, and I'll just kind of, basically what we do is we have a set of on-chain registries, and a registry basically can be like a TCR, it could be a proof of authority or whatever it is. And then we also have a set of banking smart contracts where you can deposit your tokens and then withdraw them safely. And so there's also, we support a ERC20 stablecoin for payments. So what we're kind of coining this is kind of very much similar to TCRs. It's more like token incentivized sidechains. So the mechanism that we provide here is that when you deploy your sidechain, you can specify a staking coin, right, of your choice. And the idea is that your verifiers are incentivized for that staking coin value to go up. But if you use that same coin as a payment mechanism, your users will be very unhappy because the value is fluctuating too much. And so the idea is to have a staking coin, but in your application you can use a payment coin. So it's kind of a framework for creating tokenized applications that don't force the user to use another crappy payment token. And so that's kind of like the framework that we're trying to provide developers and businesses. And then I'll go specifically into how we use this framework that we develop. And we basically have our state is a set of Merkleized metrics, participant balances and verifier balances, and I'll go a little bit deeper. We use a proof of stake consensus. So the sidechain itself uses a proof of stake that itself supports the basic sharding just to be able to make the sidechain more decentralized. Okay, so the way that we achieve our sidechain proof of stake consensus is what we call Andromeda. It's basically a mechanism. Well, first of all, it's connected to a registry, so you can see some screenshots here, but it could be any registry, it could be a TCR, so you might be creating a curated set of verifiers, or in this case, it's a proof of authority. So the way that it works is you have a one token, one vote mechanism, and consensus is just consensus on a 32-byte hash. So whatever that 32-byte hash represents can be anything. You know, in our case, it's a set of Merkle's metrics, rolled up metrics. But it doesn't have to be. Like, that's only we do that, of course, because we need to prove certain leaves in that state. But it could be anything. It could be just a regular hash of your state transition. So if you're a developer, what we do is we kind of give you a framework very similar to Tendermint, in such that you have a previous state, and then you say, hey, this is my new state, and then you as a verifier participate in consensus on that state. And we're going to open source that. And then it also supports basic sharding. Basically, verifiers can be divided into shards, and consensus, basically each shard has its own state. And because in our case it works very well, and I'll go into that in a second. So here's a snippet of the Andromeda smart contract. It's going to be open source soon. We're just cleaning up some PRs right now. Yeah, so the way that it works is it works on cycles of blocks. So for example, we say, hey, for this sidechain, we want to come to a consensus roughly around every hour. There's some jitter period that the verifiers handle, but it basically calculates how many blocks per period, and then it divides that into two rounds. So you have your proposal period, and then you have your reveal period. So you have the proposal, you propose your blinded state, and then it's connected to the registry. You can see that around here, line 92. It creates it gets the balance from the registry, and then it organizes the blocks based on the block height, which is computed based on the depth of the root chain. So it's a very, very basic kind of blind voting based consensus system that happens on chain. So this is how a sidechain typically looks like, very general. So in the future, the idea is that you can create your own sidechain and deploy verifiers. In our case, we have verifiers that compute multi-party data for advertising. And then deploys payments across all the participants in that programmatic supply chain. And then that state is stored on ETHEREUM. Just a visual representation of how basically on the root chain, it's a 32 byte hash that represents the Merkle-free off-chain. Roughly this is how we do it. And actually, I'll just kind of blast through this because it's really not that, it's only relevant in our use case of ad tech. In that we have basically each state is aggregated data, and then we can validate each shard and then get a global view by doing a map reduce of that raw data and then creating a global view of the data. So excuse the bad diagrams, but so the way that it works is your sidechain, your token incentivized sidechain is connected to a registry, which are you have your participants. The participants send side messages to the sidechain, and then the consensus happens, and then that consensus is memorialized on the root chain. So here's how we envision. Well, this is how our application looks, and so we think this is a kind of a good way to generalize things, especially this mechanism. It's able to protect the balances through a plasma-like banking mechanism, which I'll get into. So basically, our root state is composed of three subtrees. And so we have one tree which is composed of the participant balances. Then we have another one which is the verifier balances, and then we have the root of the state. So what happens is we have a sidechain smart contract that's actually written in Ruby. And the way that it works, it just says, hey, based on this code and based on all these events that we've gotten, since the last consensus round, it updates the balances. And so it says, I'm going to take the balances from the participants and give that, over to other participants. And the verifiers also get a portion of these. And this is also where the slashing takes place. The way that it looks is basically it's a sparse, the balances, for example, more specifically, the balances are composed of a sparse Merkle tree in which each ID is an account ID, and then underneath is the balances. So you basically just updating the balances for the account. That goes into the root, into the balance root, and then it all comes to the finalized root. So the idea is that we're trying to create a framework for generalized state transitions that basically update balances. So basically that logic can be incorporated in any language, in any sidechain mechanism. But it basically implements the logic that inputs sign messages from multiple events and updates the balances. So we have sidechain app, SAP or something. But basically, you could write your own app based on messages and put some logic, has a certain constraint and satisfy. If so, you update the balances, and it can be like any state, any code. The bad part, there's always trade-offs, So the bad part is you don't have any on-chain challenging of invalid state transitions. So you're basically fully relying on the sidechain's proof of stake mechanism. However, your assets are fully secured, and so that's the key mechanism. So, for example, if just like plasma MVP, if you detect that when you send signals that the sidechain has is producing invalid blocks, you can withdraw all your funds from the plasma bank in a plasma MVP style deposit and exit. So it's basically connected to our sidechain proof of stake consensus, which is Andromeda, to get the latest valid state. And you basically requires a proof of the balance. So you say, hey, this is my private key. Obviously you're using MetaMask, and then you say this is the Merkle proof to say that I own this balance based on the latest valid state. And then there's a challenge period. And basically it's non-custodial, so the idea here that even though you're trusting the proof of stake sidechain, if you signal each other that the sidechain is producing invalid blocks, you basically can exit your funds and the sidechain can exit. So very much like Plasma MVP, which is why I mentioned that at the beginning. Super quick. My name is Miguel Morales. That's my Twitter. And credit to learnplasma.org. It's a great website. Check it out. That's it. Questions?
Talk a little bit about timeline. So maturity.
Yeah, Andromeda has actually been in development for about 9 months at least. That's going to get released in the next month, 2 worst case scenario. The banking stuff, that's more about 4 months. I think for it to be like fully stable, like in open source. So like we tend to do things internally and then we open source it. And so Andromeda took about 1 to 2 months. Plasma Bank is about 4 months roughly. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Miguel. Okay, so the last speaker of the day is Toss here. Toss, okay. So we have one more speaker for the day, and this one is going to be a relatively short one. So we'll not take a break for this one. We'll just go right into it.
How do we get to the end? Ready? Yeah.
So who's working on an application using either Plasma or state channels, or wants to work on an application? Anybody building an application using one of these scalability solutions, or planning on building a scalability solution? I'm going to talk about Plasma versus channels. You've heard a lot about both of them today, so I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison. Plasma versus state channels, what are the pros and cons? What would you consider if you're going to build an application using one of these technologies, and how would you pick which one to use? Sorry? Oh, I just thought, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's loading up. So my name is Josh James. I can't tell you exactly what we're doing yet, so we haven't officially announced anything yet, but it's Plasma.
1 minute.
Okay. A Plasma research group is being formed to kind of collect some Plasma researchers that are working in Italy right now, and I'm involved with that. So I'm on the Plasma side, but I want to kind of compare and contrast Plasma versus channels to give you guys an idea of what you might consider if you're going to choose one. Okay, looks like we're going to Okay.
I just need it.
Okay, so sorry about that. So how do you choose Plasma or state channels for payment applications? So specifically looking at payment applications, one party sending money to another within Plasma or state channels type framework. And how are you going to pick one or the other? So it's complicated. There are a lot of factors to consider. You got to understand the applications of business to business, business to consumer, or peer to peer. So if it's, for example, B2B where you have businesses paying each other, or B2C where you have consumers paying a business, that might work in with one type of technology better than you would work in a peer-to-peer environment where you have individuals sending money to each other. So it's going to be an important factor. Also, what is the typical payment size, typical payment frequency? Are people sending each other thousands of dollars once a month, or are they sending each other fractions of a cent every second? It's a big difference. So details will vary between different applications, and also between different implementations of each of these technologies. So you've heard about state channels in various forms, you've heard about Plasma in various forms. So each of these flavors of Plasma and state channels have slightly different properties, but I'm going to talk about two specifically. So I'm going to talk about payment channels, bidirectional payment channels versus Plasma embedded. So one key difference is architectural. Plasma has an operator, so there's a central, or it could be multiple, but there's at least one operator node running Plasma software that is creating blocks and is validating the transactions and submitting them to a root chain. In payment channels, you do not necessarily have any centralized entity or operator running any functionality in the network. You can have direct peer-to-peer payment channels. You can also have a hub, so people talk about hubs. And that's kind of a semi-centralized version of payment channels, but it's not required. So validation in payment channels is done by the participants. If Alice and Bob are transacting, they are validating the transaction and signing off on it and saying this is a valid transaction. In Plasma, you have an operator that is validating the transaction, so it's more centralized. Capacity, system capacity, how many transactions per second can each one handle? It's going to be limited by the hub in the Plasma payment channels, or by the operator in Plasma. So there's again, the bottlenecks are similar. You've got a kind of semi-centralized entity there that's processing transactions, and that's going to be your bottleneck. And then support for multiple token types. So any of these can support Ethereum, ERC 2721, whatever kind of tokens you want. They're pretty much on par in that regard. Joining the network. So in Plasma, to join, you do not need to join the network. You're just going to receive state or receive transactions or funds. In payment channels, you have to open a channel to join the network and make a deposit before you can even receive funds. So like if somebody wants to pay you, you have to create a channel, do an on-chain transaction which costs money, and make a deposit before they can send you any link. With Plasma Debit, you don't have to do that. Cost to make a deposit is roughly the same. So if you want to deposit funds from the root chain onto your state channel, you're going to do an on-chain transaction. It's probably on the order of 100,000 gas, which is today's prices is something like 15 cents, 10-15 cents to open that channel and make a deposit. With Plasma, it's the same order of magnitude, maybe 100,000 gas, maybe a little bit less, so 10-15 cents to make a deposit from your chain to a Plasma chain. And the time to make a deposit in both cases is about the same. You're looking at about a few Ethereum block periods, which is kind of how long it takes to finalize an Ethereum transaction. So on the order of tens of seconds to a minute or two. Payment channels have very fast transaction latency, which is how long it takes from, if Alice paid Bob, how long does it take Bob to see the transaction to see that Alice paid him? It's milliseconds with payment channels. It's essentially how fast is the network, how long does it take packets to go from Alice to Bob? In Plasma, it could be a little bit longer because there's an operator involved, so the payment is actually going to the operator. And if the recipient, say Bob, is subscribed to streaming transactions from the operator, he can see the transaction pretty fast, potentially within milliseconds. Otherwise, if the recipient is just looking at Plasma blocks to see what is the next block produced that includes this transaction, it's going to take longer. Depends on the Plasma block time, but probably in the order of tens of seconds. So a little bit slower potentially. This is a big deal. The next one is a big deal. So transaction finality is really fast with payment channels. So you can have essentially instant finality or millisecond finality. So if Alice pays Bob, Bob can be confident within milliseconds that payment is irreversible. With Plasma, it takes longer because you have to submit a block to the Ethereum root chain and have that block finalized on the root chain before you can consider a transaction finalized. So that's going to take tens of seconds, which is significantly slower. Depends on your application whether this is a big deal or not. So exiting or withdrawing your funds to the root chain if you want to take your funds out of a payment channel. If both parties are cooperative or online and agree to close the channel, they can do it instantly, within milliseconds. But if one party's offline, let's say Alice and Bob transacted, and then Bob goes offline, Alice wants to close the channel and withdraw her funds, that's going to take days. It's a delayed exit. With Plasma, you're delayed for days by default. So the default case is it takes you days to get your money out. There's been some research or discussion about ways to accelerate this by having a third party provide liquidity and kind of loan your money that you're exiting and then get paid back when your exit is finalized. But it's a more complicated process. There's more potential for delayed exit with Plasma. The cost to withdraw your funds to the root chain, if you want to withdraw from a payment channel, you're looking at the cost of the gas cost to close the channel, so it's on the order of 100,000 gas, maybe a little bit less, but say 10-15 cents. That's for a cooperative exit. If one party's offline, if it's a non-cooperative exit, then it's going to be a little bit more expensive to take longer. And this gas cost is paid for in Ether by the user who's closing the channel. With Plasma, it's a bit more complicated. So you've got a two-step exit, so you have to start and finalize a withdrawal. Again, you're paying for the gas in Ether. And the user may be required to post a bond to incentivize challenges, which means the user has to have some funds on the root chain for withdrawal. Essentially to say, this is a legitimate withdrawal, and if you can prove that it's not, you can take my money with you. So you have to have kind of more money to take your money out in a Plasma situation. And potentially additional fees for the fast exit broker. So if you're using the liquidity provider for your exit, that's going to cost some interest that they're going to charge you. And then the gas costs on higher exit as well. Potentially a few $100,000 gas based on some benchmarks I've seen. to exit a Plasma wallet or a Plasma account into the root chain. But there's been some research into mass exits, which could make this cheaper. So essentially, a bunch of people who are exiting at the same time can group their exits together and amortize the gas cost against multiple exits and bring it down to maybe in the order of 20,000 gas. So it could be cheaper, but it's still it's more complex to do that. Okay, limitations, payment channels. So we've seen that each party can only receive as much value or funds as they have deposited into a payment channel. So if I put a channel and deposit $5 and somebody wants to send me $100, they can't do that. That's a pretty severe limitation, depending on application.
Why is that?
That's the way payment channels work. So you have to deposit funds in the payment channel before somebody can send you funds. We don't have time to go into the mechanics of it, but we'll talk about it. With Plasma Debit, the recipient does not have to be online. With Plasma Debit, there's no limitations. So anybody can send anybody else any amount of money at any time as long as they have that money. So Plasma meets a gold star in that category. Participant liveness, so the bidirectional channels, which is what most implementations are in state channels, both parties have to be online. If Alice wants to send Bob money, Bob has to be online and sign up on the transaction, or you can't have a transaction. You can do omnidirectional channels, which don't require that, but most implementations are bidirectional. And with Plasma Debit, the recipient does not have to be online, so you don't have to be online for me to send you money. So that's a potential benefit of Plasma, depending on your application, how big of a deal that is, but Plasma gets a gold star there. Watchtowers are a thing in both areas, so if you're using payment channels and you're going to go offline for days or more, you need to have somebody watching your channel to make sure that the other party doesn't steal your funds. So you can either, if you're going to go offline for a while, you can either close your channel, or you can pay somebody else to watch it for you, but if you don't, you have the risk of losing your funds. Plasma also has watching issues, so somebody's going to be watching your wallet in Plasma if you're going to be offline again for days. So there's been talk about building watchers or watchtowers, decisions about whether that's feasible with Plasma Cash or what Plasma Debit that I think have not been resolved yet, but again, watching is an issue in both environments. Okay, cost per transaction. So a payment channel is probably going to be the least expensive depending on your application. Because there's no data being submitted to the root chain every time there's a transaction, there's no cost per transaction other than what the operator of the hub may charge you for relaying that transaction, if there is one. So if it's peer-to-peer, there's no cost. If there's a hub, the hub may charge some small transaction fee, but there's no cost to submit data to the root chain when you're transacting with the payment channel. So potentially cheaper there. Plasma Debit can get pretty expensive to operate. So the operating cost for a Plasma Debit chain, the main operating cost is the cost of submitting a block to Ethereum every time we finalize Plasma state. So submitting a block to Ethereum costs roughly on the order of 100,000 gas. And let's say you want to submit your Plasma block every 15 seconds. It's going to be about 2 million blocks per year, which is about $160,000 per year at today's prices, which obviously could go up. So Plasma can be pretty expensive to operate. You can bring this cost down by not submitting every block. You can split up your 10th block, so that would bring your finality time up though. So it's a trade-off between finality time and cost, operating cost. And whether your application can accept that or not is up to you. Total operating cost for a payment channel network is going to be essentially the routing transactions by users to open and close channels, capital lockup on transaction recipients. So again, if you want to receive funds, you have to deposit funds in the channel. It's capital lockup, it's going to cost you money for that capital. Potential cost of capital lockup to run the hubs, if you're using hubs, and also watchtowers. With Plasma, you have kind of the same fees. There's cost to run each of there's root chain transaction costs. There's the transaction cost by the operator to submit Plasma blocks to the root chain, and we see above, which is probably the biggest cost. And then there's cost to run validator nodes, watchtowers, and then interest or capital lockup costs by the fast withdrawal providers if you're doing that. So that's kind of it. I went pretty fast, but if you want to look at this information later, go to tinyurl.com/L2scaling. It's all right there. And if you're building an application and you want to use Plasma, talk to me. I would love to hear about your applications for Plasma. Thank you.
So does that mean a Plasma chain and all the data is on the main chain at some point?
Not all the data, you're just spending a hash of each block of Plasma onto the root chain, but it costs something to do that.
Okay.
It's a transaction on the root chain. Yeah, proof of the data goes to the main chain, but not all the data itself.
And then where's that?
It's a hash of the root chain. So it's proof that you can prove that your data is valid based on what you see in the main chain.
And then where the rest of that data is usually where?
So Plasma blocks can be stored with a Plasma operator and or by the users. You might want the users, they might not both want to store them, so in case the operator goes offline, the users still have the data. It depends on your implementation. But the Plasma operators producing Plasma blocks can definitely store those blocks and make them available. If they go offline, you want to have the data. Like if the Plasma operator goes offline and you want to be able to withdraw your funds, you need to have enough data to prove that you have your funds.
Yeah, and you would write that data store in whatever language or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever, like, I mean, you could be, it's running on a server somewhere, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was confused about not being able to receive money on the payment channel.
Sorry?
I was confused about not being able to receive money in the payment channel to deposit money.
Yeah.
Can you describe a payment channel that does happen?
Actually, I'm not sure how many directional payment channels work. I assume it's the same requirement, but bi-directional channels, yeah, you have to deposit money. So it's like you can have people writing each other's checks, and then sort of turning those checks and writing new checks without actually cashing them every time they transact. And then when you finally close it out, you like cash this check. But yeah, you cannot send to anybody unless they have a big enough balance in their account to accommodate that. Thank you.
And thank you everybody for sticking around. Let's give yourselves another round of applause. Okay, so I'm just going to close it off by saying this is the first ever scaling conference that we've ever done. So, we've had the support of ETHEREUM Foundation. Obviously, we couldn't have done it without Consensus and Spain Chain to help put all this together. So, please give them a round of applause. So all So number one, if you're interested in learning more about state channel development, I know the morning was like a good way to kind of dive into this space, but if you want to spend the full day learning about it, tentatively, October 21st, we're going to be doing an advanced state channel boot camp. So that'll be somewhere here in Los Angeles, location TBD, but look out for all this information that will be sent out to you via email. And we're going to have round 2 of State of Scale. So we're trying to do this every 2 months. So this was a conference, right, to kind of get everyone's feet wet and exposed to the space. Now we want to actually start building. So every event after this is going to be a hackathon. So more details forthcoming. That one will probably be sometime in November. So look out for that. And last but not least, we're going to be sending out feedback forms to you guys after this is over. So look out for that in your email, and please give us feedback because we need money from the ETHEREUM Foundation. No, I'm kidding. Please give us feedback so that we can continue to make good events like this and give you guys good content, invite amazing speakers, and just continue to build in the space. So there is going to be a bar in the back, open bar. We have wine and beer, and that about sums it up. So thank you, everybody.
Hey guys, sorry, just a couple more minutes here quickly. I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Dan Pasek. I'm one of the co-founders here, along with Peter at Phase 2. For those of you who haven't been in the space, we've been open for around 10 months now. The building used to be Maker Studios. We converted into a co-working space. And just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to Consensus, Dapper Networks, Spank Chain, everyone involved. It's pretty exciting what we're trying to do here. We're really trying to create a community and really curate around frontier technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and we have some really great companies in here. We have Netflix, we have Nike, we have Consensus, some top VR companies. So it's exciting that we get to host events like this and educational seminars. If you guys are interested in the space, happy to give you tours. And so again, just thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to Lily, who works tirelessly to put everything together along with obviously everyone else at Special Thanks to her as well.
Thank you, Lily.
And now a song. No, just kidding. So I just want to let you guys know that we will be putting all the furniture back in this space. It's not what our space actually looks like. So if you guys could just collect your belongings, we will ask if you guys can help us put the furniture back to the way it was. The tables will go on, these white tables will go on a little dolly thing out there, and then we'll wheel some things back in. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys.